Hi, it's Richard from the Siebel Hub again with the second in our IP2016 videos. So you've spent ages working out that there's an enterprise parameter to enable workspaces, but the Workspace Dashboard is showing you that it's in read-only, there's only one version, and none of the buttons work. So what do you need to do to make all of this work properly? The first news is you need to download and prepare an image for Siebel Tools, the good old-fashioned non-web version. Be prepared for an extremely slow and long image creation, followed by an extremely slow and long installation process, especially if you are planning on installing XE for the sample or the local database. Choose the language, and off we go to create our images. So I spared you about 15 minutes there. Now I'm ready to go and run the installer for Siebel Tools. I'll clean up a bit on the desktop. Try not to click on the DVD drive. And into Windows Client Tools. How counterintuitive is that? And run the setup. Those of you who followed the step-by-step visual guide to creating the VM will have noticed that Siebel Tools wasn't in it. So now I'm going to walk quickly through the steps. I'm going to choose English, choose MS SQL Server since that's my server database. I'm going to fill in my localhost database server and my Siebel DB, which is my MS SQL instance name. And I have created a local file system path for tools, and I'm going to enter localhost for a variety of other parameters as we go along. Here we go. Gateway name, server address, localhost, and my enterprise name is Siebel 16. The directory path for the 32-bit Oracle client, some of you will remember from the previous release. I'm going to choose a folder on my C drive which definitively does not exist right now. I'll call it Aura32 because it's 32-bit. Pop in the username and password and make sure install local DB is checked. Click install and wait for a very, very, very long time. Be prepared for the usual round robin 0 to 100, backwards from 100 to 99, back to 0, back to 50, up to 100, back to 0, all the usual chaos. It's going to do a lot of copying, a lot of preparing, and since I chose to install the local database, it's going to be motoring through the creation of the XE installation. Yeah. So when you're looking at something like this for a long, long time and you're wondering what on earth it's doing, if you just wait a few seconds, 3, 2, 1, by the magic of Hollywood, hup, a new icon should appear down the bottom. There it is, and it's busy running Install Shield, which is I'm using to install the Express edition of Oracle. By the time this is finished, probably IP2017 will be out, and by the time you're done, you'll have an Oracle installation and a TNS listener to go with your SQL server and everything else you've got on your virtual machine. And you'll be able to watch Get Local, as well as a few others like SQL Plus, ripping through your memory, as it installs both XE and, of course, the local database if you checked the checkbox like I did. So having gone through that rather lengthy process, you are now the proud owner of an Oracle XE installation and a local database. But you're also very likely to want to go immediately and work on your server database to enable the Workspaces functionality, which is one of the highlights of the IP2016 release. To do this requires the manipulation of an executable file called Enable Workspace, which will be found wherever you've put Siebel Tools in the bin folder. And it should be in here somewhere. Enable Workspace, there we go. I had significant challenges with this file, and also with the documentation surrounding the file from the bookshelf. The bookshelf made several errors, gave the incorrect format for the switches, gave the wrong switch twice, so you didn't know which value to use in which circumstance, and in spite of entering lots and lots of things that appeared to be correct according to the bookshelf, nothing worked. I eventually figured out that something strange was happening behind the scenes. When you run this executable, in a folder which it calls Enable Workspace Logs or something similar in the bin folder, it creates some SQL files. No great surprise. And these SQL files include a file, for example, to query your database for the repository ID or the user ID that you quoted. And I realized that in my instance of Siebel running under MS SQL Server, these scripts were not running correctly. In fact, they were returning no data. So if I looked in the log folder, I realized that these script files that were being generated incorrectly. They either were having no prefix, so they were just looking for s_repository, or they were failing to take into account MS SQL syntax, where you would have, for example, instance followed by 2 dots, not 1 dot. So mine would be siebeldb ... s_user, for example. In the end, I was able to get it to work by essentially taking advantage of the fact that the -t switch, which is the table owner, is actually just passed into the SQL files and is used as a prefix for the select statement. So select table owner dot s_table name. So in the end, I simply faked it by adding as table owner siebeldb dot, which meant that it was passed as is and generated SQL files that worked appropriately. I'm not entirely sure that that's how it's supposed to work, but it did. In any case, this process will take a very long time because it is going to modify each of the repository tables by adding new columns to handle workspace owners and workspace identifiers, and then it will populate some data based on the workspace owner that you just added to your command line. Be prepared for a wait. While this process is happening, you can, of course, watch carefully in the task manager and observe the different steps, especially SQL Server, in my case, updating the records. Or you can go to the Workspace Logs folder and check the output files and see the current state of your database. Or you can even examine the SQL files that are being used and check out the list of repository tables that have to be updated, so you kind of know where you are in the grand scheme of things. But it's going to take quite a while. Eventually, however, through the miracle of patience, you'll reach this point. And you'll be very, very, very happy. Your server database has been updated. So, what does all this actually mean? Well, it means two things. One, the next time you log into your favorite application, Siebel Call Center, in an environment where Enable Workspaces has been set to true, you'll observe that the workspace icons, well, the whole thing's come alive. Now I can click the Workspace Dashboard. You'll recall that the script I ran, sadmin, was the workspace owner of the initial workspace. Well, basically now, this dude can create workspaces, open a workspace, manage the workspace, look at objects that are being modified, and perform all sorts of comparisons. Basically, we'll cover all of this in one or more articles and videos later on. But let's not forget the other side of the story as well. This is not just about using the web browser to make changes and avoid having to use a local database. These new workspace features are also available inside good old-fashioned thick client Siebel tools. Look at the title bar. It's workspace aware. And you'll find a workspace menu squeezed between tools and window with all of the same commands enabling you to create a new workspace, merge contents, look at the Explorer, look at the objects that have been worked on, and so forth. So this is a good thing for 3 reasons. 1, you can learn it in a familiar environment. Working with Siebel tools is something we're all very familiar with. 2, doing it this way, you won't need a local database. And 3, you'll be future-proofing yourself by becoming familiar with all of this, ready for when a future of web tools becomes available, whenever that is. We hope you enjoyed this second video, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. In the meantime, have a great day.